We are back. Men's Breakthrough is back. And for probably the next 7 or 8 weeks, 9 weeks or so, I have a really amazing guest, Stephen Frueh. And Dr. Frueh and I are going to talk about relationships. And so today we're going to talk about the guarded self. And I got a little bit of history with the guarded self, that different times in my life when things didn't go my way, the life didn't go my way, I didn't get my way, or things were said to me in a way that I didn't like, I got a little guarded. Maybe you know what that's like. So I'm trying to think of a time that my life really went from like being totally vulnerable, totally open, totally courageous to guarded. And I think it probably would have happened somewhere in the married part of my life, like being married. And I'm going to think about that. But before I come up with that story, I'm going to bring on Dr. Frueh. Dr. Frueh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know if I want this hat on or not. I'm going to take it off. You see my bald head. There we go.
That's right.
Well, you had a hat on. You look so good in the hat. I thought I would put my hat on. But, I put my hat on. I looked like a guy that was down by the bar or something like that. So,
you look like you're going fishing or something.
Yeah. Scratching my butt, that kind of thing.
All right, Lester, let's talk. Dr.
So what do you want to talk about today, Martin?
I was thinking about like when I used to be like so open, like I didn't guard myself.
Whatever it is. So we're learning. Over those first, 10, 12 years, there's a lot of learning going on. Yeah. Now, you get to be an adolescent, and guess what happens? The hormonal cocktail takes over. You get to be
horny cocktail thing, huh?
Yeah, well, you get there,
I had that.
The first time you notice it in the 7th, 8th, or 9th grade, a girl, and you look at her and you go, oh, whoa.
Her name was Susan.
And you don't know what to do with that, but your heart is wide open again. Yeah. And there's some people who say, Robert Bly is a poet. He's gone now, but he's a wonderful poet. If your listeners check out Robert Bly. But for men, he's wonderful. He has a book, Iron John. It's wonderful.
I have it. You told me about it. It's right here.
It's a great, great, great book. Now, Robert Bly said, not only is it true what I'm talking about, but he said there's a place in adolescence where the heart of a young man opens. You all can kind of remember. I remember a day in the fall. Yes, I remember a day in the fall in college. It was cold, as cool as New England. Leaves were blowing. I was walking from class in the afternoon over to my dorm, and I started to pirouette across the basketball court. I felt so free, so happy, so hopeful, so good. Robert Bly talks about that moment in every young man's life, a moment of openness, and what you do with that moment of openness. So some of the things that we're going to talk about is that you take that openness to the first young woman who really makes a big impression on you, and your hormone cocktail is stirring and all kinds of chemical reactions are going on inside you, and you think you've just died and gone to heaven, and you can't sleep, and you're worried about a zit on your face, or you're worried about whether your car is clean, whatever you're worried about, but you are wide open. You are what we call in love.
So real quick, before the worry, the moment of openness doesn't have any worry, right?
Right. I don't think it does.
Yeah. So I can remember that. So I remember mine. So it was in 6th grade, and we had a 6th grade party, and they played music, and I started to dance, and I liked dancing. I was dancing, and a couple of the guys made fun of me because I was dancing.
Yeah.
And I remember I looked at him, and it's going to sound totally conceited or arrogant. I looked at him and I'm like, I'm cooler than you. Like, what you say doesn't matter. And I just kept dancing.
Yes.
But you know what? If it was other people that would have said it, the ones that I thought were cooler than me or something.
Yeah.
I probably would have had that affect me.
We call those the Power Rangers. The people in your life who are influential and strong, and you want them to like you.
To approve of me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they can do great damage
Yeah.
if you don't have a tribe. One of these we're going to talk about creating your own tribe. Not
Yeah.
today. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about finding your voice and
Yeah.
creating your tribe. Now, what that's about is right there what Martine just said. He was dancing, he was happy, he was open. You could say there's the word enthusiasm. You know that word
For
has
sure.
the root of that word is entheos. You know
And
what
Theos.
in Greek, and that means God within you. He
Oh,
was accessing God within him. He was
nice.
dancing like David of old. He was in his spiritual center.
Yeah, indeed.
Now the Power Rangers come along and they go, you know, Martine, you're not that cool a dancer. Or
I
this is
remember
the wrong.
I can tell you my Power Rangers. I know my Power Ranger moment.
Yeah, there you
Go ahead. You
go.
keep going though, and I'll tell you. Go ahead.
Well, that right there. So if he doesn't have a tribe, he doesn't have somebody to run that by. He gets a little bit shamed or a lot shamed,
Yeah, I back off.
and
Yeah.
in the shaming, he starts to talk to himself differently. Like maybe he says, "What's the matter with you, Martine?" I mean, that's kind of silly, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
John wasn't dancing.
Yeah.
He's more grown up or more sophisticated than me. What an idiot I must be, or something like that. So that's a moment in the guardedness. The guardedness starts to now reflect the guardedness of early childhood, where he learned that in the classroom, where he
Yeah.
learned that in the hat. Don't talk to your mama that way, where he
Yeah.
learned that stuff.
Yeah.
Now he's doing it at 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
Now, so then other relationships happen. But you were going to tell a story and then we'll go to the other
Well,
relationship. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Now keep going. My story's not as important as what you're talking about. So, but I can see that when I started this out, I was talking about my marriage and going into my marriage, but clearly the guardedness happened when I was a child. And if I think about the emotion that I felt after when I was getting triggered, the emotion that I was experiencing during the trigger was the guarded emotion. It was that guarded emotion. Like I think, okay, in my marriage, I was like maybe 35. That way that I was feeling when some of the stuff that happened when I was younger, the same feeling. Wasn't
Yeah.
a new feeling. It was a
Yes.
familiar feeling. I,
Yes.
and what I was clear about is I didn't like that feeling.
Right. Well, one of the things there is that you feeling when you're getting married or when you were married?
When I was married, when I
When
had
you
been
were,
married for about 7 or 8 years.
okay, that's a perfect point
Yeah.
because that's the what I call the hormone cocktail lasts for, most, there's 50 to 55% of marriages fail. A lot of them fail right around the 5 to 7 year mark. Why is that? Because the hormone cocktail carries you a certain degree, and your aspirations and your hope and your excitement carry you for a while. But sooner or later, you're going to start saying, "Who are you really? Who am I really?"
Yeah.
And you're going to start opening, trying to see, I can be much more open with her than this, or I would like much more openness from her. For example, in our sexual life, I'd
Yeah.
like much more openness than we have. How do we do that? Hey, Dr. Frueh, we've been married 7 years and we don't have sex anymore. What's going on?
Yeah.
Well, what's going on is that two of you have kind of made a silent agreement to be guarded about these intimate moments that you've never really shared with anybody in your life, and you're 35 years old. So you don't talk about the real stuff, you talk about the daily stuff. And if you're a male, what happens
But
is,
you know what you do, doctor? You're in the background, you're wishing you could talk about what you really want to talk about. Like I know I can see this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this, but you know what? I really wish I could talk about this. And as I'm talking, I might be having a good time, but there's a little bit of resentment that's growing back here because I can't really share what I
yes,
want to share.
that's right. And guess what the male does? This is really interesting to me because what men do, my wife and I were just talking about this early this morning. She said, why is it something that she was talking about with some of her clients? I said, well, I think if you want to put a great big generalization on it, I know you can't fine tune it, but women are really relationship based and we're task based. And if you
Yeah.
look at it that way, it's just a way to look at things. It's not Don't anybody out there think, I don't have a research degree, but it's true in a way that what we do in that situation is we start thinking about action items. We start analyzing. We start diagnosing. We start theorizing. We start all of that stuff that we're so good at,
Yeah.
what we call the
We're
CEO brain.
concluding. We're concluding things. We're
Yeah,
resolving. Like
yeah,
I know, like I
yeah,
resolve, like I know, like I resolve thoughts. Like I concluded a thought, and that resolved this thing for me. And I'll tell you, it was mostly always wrong.
yeah.
It was
Oh,
always,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but the
If
thing
you,
is that I'm a smart rat. So whatever I conclude, I think is right, and I stand by it.
me too, me too. Not only are you smart, but you're superior and condescending. And so
Well,
I
it
know that
sounds good,
because
but it's not.
no,
That sure
takes
sounds
one.
nice, doesn't it?
It takes one to know one, right? So what you do is, yeah, well, not only that, but I'm the smartest guy in the room. So I can see what if she was on this video, she would we come up with an example and I'd say, sure, I know better than Lynn who she is. And then she'd
Yeah,
say, no, you don't. But I think I do. And so we
yeah.
are then now we're fueling the guardedness. Now we're
Mm.
amping it up because if she thinks that I know better than she does who she is, she's going to be more guarded, not less guarded.
Yeah,
And we're going
yeah.
to,
I've got to
and
protect.
Gottman,
Yeah, yeah,
she got to self-protect. Well,
yeah. I got to
Gottman
protect.
up in Washington calls it the four horses of the apocalypse. We do a thing on that. We should do a thing on that. But the first horse of the apocalypse, he says he can tell if a marriage is going to fail if he watches them fight for a 15-minute video. He can predict 90% of the time whether it's going to make it or not, because the
Yeah.
first horse of the apocalypse is criticism. And that's what
Mm.
we're talking about right there. If I'm diagnosing and theorizing about her, what it comes across to her is I'm superior and I'm criticizing her.
Yeah.
So
There's no.
men,
There's no. There's no. There's no. There's nothing you can do about criticism. It comes at you, and it's hard. That criticism's a hard thing to defend, because you're often defending a negative. You're defending something that's negative, so you're trying. It just doesn't work. It's like it's a false thing that you're trying to defend. So it becomes all positional. It's all whatever my opinion is, and how can you defend against my opinion, right?
oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Gottman's second horse of the apocalypse, criticism produces defensiveness. That's what you're picking up right there.
yeah.
Criticism, one, produces defensiveness, two. And what does defensiveness produce? Stonewalling.
Oh,
Stone,
Stonewall. Okay.
Stonewalling produces contempt. And by the time you get to contempt, game's over, he says. The relationship has lost any chance of making it. So
Is
you
that
got to
Gottman in
Gottman,
emotional intelligence? Uh-huh.
John Gottman.
An emotional intelligence guy. Yeah.
No, that's not emotional intelligence. That's somebody
Oh, he's
else.
talking. Is that the one that did him? What is it? The therapy.
I can't think of who emotional intelligence was, but
I thought that was Gottman.
yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it's not John Gottman.
Okay.
But Gottman is up in Washington, and he's the one that talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. That's how you
Yeah.
get it. Okay. So I'm not going to look it up right now, but your listeners can. Emotional
Yeah.
intelligence is a different deal entirely, but it's very, very, very related to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So now we're moving. How much time do we have,
Let's
Martin?
go another 10 minutes or so. Yeah.
Okay. So we're moving from childhood through adolescence. You want to look at childhood, your own, and then you want to look at it at adolescence, your own, and what you were dealing with there. And you go from that. Yeah, there's John Gottman. Um, you want to go from that to moving into young adulthood. And you're moving into young adulthood. Now, your ship it might be kind of rudderless by this time because you haven't had any therapy. You maybe have a poor relationship with your own mom and dad. You don't have a tribe. You've tried to get your approval by your good looks or by your charm, maybe. You try to buy it,
Yeah.
but
It's all superficial stuff.
yeah, it's pretty superficial. And you have to get in your young adulthood, you have to find your core, your center, your ground.
Yeah.
And that's what it's called, becoming a man. You got to find that. That's the
Yeah.
voice. And that's the
Wow.
standards. That's the tribe. That's what that is. So now he's somewhere in young adulthood and he meets the love of his life, and she's just wonderful and she's open. Now, I want to put a parenthesis here. I don't want any young man out there who's listening to this or watching it to think I'm saying all the problems in a relationship are ours,
Yeah.
because they're not.
No.
But what we fail at is trying to find out what the problems the woman has. We fail at that miserably because we can't do it. We're not qualified. We're not certified.
Say
She
that
has
again. Say that again. So I got the first part. So the where we fail at is what?
is when we try to diagnose the
Yeah,
woman.
that's it. Yeah. Or we
She's
get
responsible.
diagnosed.
She's responsible for that. So
Yeah.
if you got a relationship beginning, what the best rule you can possibly use is one my wife and I only discovered in the last 10 years. We've been together 40 years. In the last 10 years, is that I am 100% responsible for everything that's wrong in this relationship. And my faith is that she'll say the same thing to herself about herself. So
Yeah.
you got to establish, each of you doing your own inner work. That's real critical, because the
Yeah.
minute one of you starts trying to do the other person's inner work, you're on the road to failure and you're on the road to guardedness.
That sounds to me like the opportunity of a relationship,
Yes.
versus the obligation of a relationship. So if I'm saying you're responsible for this relationship, that's the obligation of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
If I say, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for this. I'm going to take 100% responsibility for this relationship. Now I'm living in possibility and opportunity. It's like, so what's the possibility? Like, if I was going to do that, what can I create? Well, how about if
Yeah.
I create a man that listens a little bit better? How about if I go, well, okay, I'm going to create a man that listens a little bit better. Well, I better go learn how to do that. Like, I'm not like a genie where I go poof and I create. I'm actually going to have to do some work around that. So where do I fall short? What am I good at? There's because there's so many men that are so good at so many things, but it's just like maybe that last 20%. It's like, hey, if you just focus on that 20%, this other 80%, you're doing great. It's that 20%. And the problem
Yeah.
with the 20% is you can do all this really, really great stuff for your wife, for your partner, whatever, and that and then but the 20% that you did wrong is the stuff that gets remembered, and so that's the stuff that hurts, that's the stuff that chips away at the relationship. The other things build the relationship, certainly, but if we don't have a way to recover from the stuff that we do that hurts the relationship, we don't have a system to come back and clean up the mistakes that we make or the accidents that happen. It's not even saying mistakes, it's say, I just, it was an accident, it was not my intention. So it's like we need those kinds of things, and if we don't, then we, like you said, we will become guarded. We
You've
become
given
guarded.
you've been giving a lot of thought to this. I can see that. And you're very articulate about it. There's
Thank you.
one thing I would add to what you're saying. Maybe the job of the young man, any of us, I think of it this way. My job is not to be loved. My job is to love.
Yeah.
So if I take that as a kind of standard, then I give up my mommy self. Do you love me? Oh, she
Yeah.
talked bad to me.
Yeah.
Oh, all that mommy stuff.
Seeking
And
approval. It's like that's that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's trying
it's
to
all
it's your
about,
you're trying to collect.
yeah, you're trying to be loved. Maybe you
Yeah.
never were loved. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I
Well, I'll
mean,
tell you
that's,
something. Let me throw something out there.
yeah,
So
throw it.
I said to myself for the longest time, this is probably one of my deepest pains that I have, Dr. Frueh, is that I made up a story that my father never loved me. Like that was his
Yes,
thing.
yes,
And I lived that story, and I was I was okay with that story because the story made sense.
yes, yes,
About 3 weeks ago, I was in this box of stuff and there was a picture of I was maybe 9 months old. There's a picture of my father holding me and he's smiling. I don't have another picture of my father holding me. Now listen, I had a great family life. My father is a good guy. He provided for us. We weren't rich, but we always had food. blah, blah, blah. He was a tough guy. He used to beat the crap out of us, but that's the old style, right? You know, but I've said he didn't love me. He didn't love me. And I looked at this picture, Dr. Frueh, and I started to consider that maybe he did. But I've been so guarded for so many 59 years old. I probably
Yes.
made up this narrative somewhere around 4 or 5 years old. So I've got
Yes.
like 50, 55 years of this narrative, right? So
Yes.
even the consideration of being loved by this man is 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 hollow. It does not have emotion in it.
Yeah.
It has a glimmer of hope or wishful kind of thinking kind of a thing, but it is so devoid of emotion,
Right.
you know. And
Right.
that's where my guardedness is. My guardedness comes from all there.
It's amazing that you told that story because we're about out of time.
Mhm.
I have a story to tell you about what you just told. When I was 13, I left home. I was on my own pathway. I couldn't stand the city anymore. People in the eighth grade were already into drugs. One of my friends had overdosed and so on. New Jersey, inner city, New Jersey. I left home. I went to live on a farm. I found the farm. I asked the farmer if I could live there. He said, yeah. My father drove me in his 41 Pontiac up to the farm. It was an all day drive. There was no interstate. It was an old 1952, 1951, somewhere, 1951. So my father drove me to the farm. The farmer's name was George, 525 acres, dairy farm, 100 cows. I got there. I didn't know what the hell I was doing or why, but all I knew is I wanted to be there. So we're standing in the road out in front of the farmhouse, asphalt road. And I have a little cardboard suitcase with a few belongings I had. And my father says, well, goodbye, Stephen. And he turns around and gets in the car and drives off. Now I was 13. Now, for the next 25 years or more, I stayed with that image. Somewhere around 30 something, I'm in therapy. I had studied theology for 8 years. I had become a pastor. I failed miserably at being a pastor because I hadn't had any psychotherapy. I didn't know who the hell I was. So one of the things I did in psychotherapy is I write my father a letter and I say, and he's broke. He's dead broke. He was a milkman all his life, blah, blah, blah. He's dead broke. And I write him a letter and say, I'll pay for it, but I want you and mom to come out here and see my therapist with me. They did. $99, 4 days and 5 nights on the Trailways bus, $99. They came across the country and he went to my therapist, who I was fortunate to have, Paul Fairweather, wonderful therapist. We're sitting in the office. My father, 5'5", Swiss immigrant, very, very simple man, uneducated, third grade. And he's talking to Paul. And Paul, who's very soft-spoken, Paul says, well, he clears his throat. He says, well, Stephen, why don't you tell your father why you wanted him here? And I say, well, I never felt like you loved me. You loved my brothers and my sister, but I never felt like you loved me. In fact, on the farm, when I left home, you didn't even say anything. You just said, well, goodbye, and you left. And he's looking at me, not an educated man, simple man. He says, that's not the way it was. I said, what? He said, you were my youngest son, and you always had a mind of your own, and I always knew I didn't want to get in your way. You sort of knew what you were doing. And so I didn't want to get in your way, and I didn't want you to see me crying.
Mm.
So I turned around, I got in the car, and I drove off.
Wow.
Wow is right. If anything went like, boom, turned the whole world upside down for me. He loved me so much, he didn't want me to see you crying, and he didn't want to stand in my way. If what I wanted to do at 13 was go live on the farm, then I guess I'm going to do it. That's what he knew.
That's amazing.
Yes.
You know,
So,
we're just
yeah,
wrong. It's like, you know what I love about Men's Breakthrough and I love about the work that I've done is that I just found out this, you know what? So many times I was just wrong.
just wrong.
I was just
Yes.
wrong. It's like,
Yes.
oops.
So wrap this up, Martine. That's as far as
Yeah.
I'm going to go today.
Wonderful story. So what we're going to do is we're going to show up every 2 weeks on Tuesday around 4 o'clock. And just like and share this. My name is Martin Lopez. I'm a men's divorce coach. I was just coach men, not just in divorce, but in relationships. And Dr. Frueh, please tell everybody about you, what you do, and how they can get a hold of you.
Well, you can get a hold of me by texting me 805-338-4286, 805-338-4286. I coach mostly men, a lot of men who are high performers, and who have kind of flattened out or lost their way or don't know the golden child within them very
Yeah.
well. And so they've lived, I would say they lived a life as an orphan in an orphan psychology. And so we work hard to break that trance or that spell and invite them into living in the present moment, fully alive. I'm 85 years old and I'm still learning and growing. I love my life and I'm always eager to get out of bed in the morning. That's what we work on.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
what you guys can count on me on this in men's breakthrough and the hangout is that I'm really going to bring my real life here. So what
Yes.
we're having here is really is a version of therapy. I'm here.
Yes.
I'm going
Yes.
to show up as a coach myself, but also as somebody that's dealing with therapy. So, you can count on that. So if there's something you want to ask, send, just, put it in the comments and we'll talk about it, So thank you for coming and we'll see you real soon.
Yeah.